Hello and welcome to the Awaken Feminine podcast. I'm your host, Kaki Lee, a mindset coach and healer who's on a mission to share the love and wisdom of inspiring women from around the world who have gone through adversity and turned their pain into purpose. Today, I am excited to be interviewing certified executive coach and the founder of Lead on Purpose Coaching and Consulting, Vivienne Damatan, who I know has so much love and wisdom to share with us today. Do I have you there, Vivienne?
Yes, you do. Hi, I am so excited and happy to be here.
Welcome, beautiful. Thank you so much for joining me on my podcast. Before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit more about you, what you do, and where you're joining me from?
Yes, absolutely. I think you did a beautiful job of introing me. But my specialty when I do my executive coaching is really working with helping female professionals get the raises and promotions that they deserve, help them up their leadership games, and take their careers to the next level. And
Yeah.
I'm joining you all the way from British Columbia, Canada.
Lovely. Thank you. And I love what you're doing because there's so much male leadership out there, and we're finding now that there's more female leaders. So having you there to help them is just really awesome.
Yeah,
So,
yes,
Vivian, let's dive in. Can you share with
Mhm.
us what you were doing before you became a executive coach and starting your own company?
Sure, absolutely. Prior to executive coaching, I was the VP of sales at a mobile advertising tech company here in Canada. Um, and I think what really kickstarted my journey was I I was progressing through my career in the tech industry, and I rose up pretty fast. I started as a business development manager, and I worked my way up to VP of sales within 2 years. But what I found was that along the way, there really weren't many supports for that leadership growth. And there definitely weren't supports for female professionals unless they were already in that executive suite. So my focus is on helping women advance to leadership roles, especially in male-dominated industries.
Yeah. So, what really did you like have a aha moment or a spiritual awakening that really led you down that path?
um, yes, so many things, but I would say probably the biggest thing for me, um, it kind of started with motherhood. To be honest, I have a I have a 4.5-year-old girl, and she's our first and our only. Um, and before her, I can admit that I was one of those really like judgy people who was like, oh yeah, if I had kids, I wouldn't do that, and I would do everything perfectly.
Always the
uh,
perfect parent before you're a parent,
yes,
right?
totally. I was, but that attitude really carried through in a lot of the things that I did, including in my work. I was this classic overachiever and perfectionist, which I think a lot of, Asian children are trained to be. Um, and for a long time, it really served me. I achieved a lot. I graduated top of my class. And then I went to this really prestigious college. And then I'm from California originally. And I moved from California to a new country, and I entered a new male dominated industry, totally new to me, had no experience, but I worked really hard and I progressed up the ladder. So I was like, oh man, like there's definitely a right way to do things. And when you just work really hard, um, you can be successful. And I felt like I was checking off all of those things on my list to be successful. Um, but then I became a mom. And when I became a mom, I was under all of these uh, ideas that I would do it perfectly. You know, I would do it perfect. I would just like mom like no other.
Yeah, I love that.
But you know what? Like when I had her, like nothing happened the way that I thought it would. And you know, babies don't care that you're a perfectionist and you want things to go a certain way. They don't care, you
Yeah.
know? And so to be honest with you, I really struggled for a long time when I first became a mom. And this is probably really common for a lot of like eh, women who classify themselves as like high achieving,
Yeah.
or are in, like executive roles or leadership positions, because you're used to people listening to you,
Yeah.
right? And you're used to doing things a certain way and then it turning out right, because that's how you got to where you were.
Yes.
Um, but when there's a tiny human, like they don't care about what your title is. They don't care about any of that stuff. And they're just a human, a little human that you need to take care of. So I actually, to be honest, and I talk about this pretty openly with people, is I got really frustrated being a mom. And in Canada, we have 12 months of maternity leave. So I was off for, I'm so thankful that I had that time with her, but it was really frustrating being in this place of anxiety and, postpartum depression for, I think I had PPD for like 10 months or so. And I just felt like I wasn't doing anything right. And that was really hard, you know?
Yeah.
So even though I was off of work, I still like kind of attached myself to work, because at least there I did things
Yeah.
the right way. Like I knew how to do things successfully at work. And I didn't quite understand that as a parent. And I think for me, when I went back after my mat leave, this is going to sound horrible, but I was really thankful to be back, because I wanted to reclaim that space for myself.
Mm.
And I just wanted to have like a hot cup of coffee without somebody crying in my face. You're laughing because it's true.
Yeah, I know. I resonate 100% with your story. So keep going.
So, I went back, and I was like so excited to be back in this place where I had been such a great leader, and people like viewed me, in a really positive light. And what I learned was that it was really different, being back at work, um, after having this tiny human to take care of versus before motherhood. And, things that I could do so easily before work, it was just different, like I chose not to travel as much, or I chose not to stay at the office as late as I would before, and like all of that stuff, just because there were different priorities. And for me, there weren't any other women leaders around me to tell me that that was okay.
Yeah.
So that was a real challenge for me. Um, but finally, like after more than a year of beating myself up, I think I finally learned to give myself a break. Um, and you know, I I just started to let go of this idea of what it means to be the perfect mom or the perfect leader within my company and the perfect daughter, whatever it was. And I
Mm.
was just like, you know what? Like, this is, everybody's different. We all have different things that we bring, and we're all at different points in our lives. And so my aha moment to start really paying attention to the way that I show up as a leader and the messages that I want to give to share with other women, it came after me fighting it like pretty much the whole way,
Yeah.
because um, I didn't want to accept I didn't want to accept it. I had been raised for my entire life with this idea that like there's a certain way that you do things, and if you do them that way, then like things happen the way that they're supposed to, and
Yeah.
everything's good, you know. Um, but I think I finally realized after this experience that that idea of perfectionism and doing things the right way, like exactly the right way, and nothing else outside of that made sense. It was really holding me back in a lot of ways. And so when when I finally understood that, I think I was really able to pay more attention to like, what is it that I want to do? What do I want to do more of in the world? And not like what kind of checklist do I want to check off? It's like what calls you? What makes you feel really excited? And for me, it's really supporting that next generation of female leaders, because I know that when you support women, um, that whole families win, the companies win, and the whole community wins,
Yeah.
because women are the center of so much.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah,
just love your journey and this and the learnings that you've learned from before you were a mother to when you were a mother to then going back. And I resonate so much with that because I was very much the same as you, being that high
hmm
achiever. When I went on maternity leave the first time, I was like the chief pharmacist in the pediatric hospital. And then I had this human being, and I'm like, what is happening? I don't know. And it took me quite a few, probably around 3 months before I actually went, oh, I like being a mum. Like for the first
hmm
3 months, I was like, what the did I do? I just want
hmm
to be back at work. And it sounds
Absolutely.
horrible, right? It sounds horrible to say that. And most
Yeah.
people won't, because it's such a, people will frown upon you. Like, how can you say
hmm
that? But it's
hmm
true. That's how you feel. And I
Yeah.
had postpartum as well, but I was not diagnosed until later on
hmm
because I'm in healthcare. So I kind of knew
Yes.
how to answer all the questions, right?
Yeah.
So, and it was not accepting the fact that I was, depressed and all those kind of things. So I just
hmm
love what you're doing. And then finding that calling to go, what can I do to actually really, have a life that will excite me, have a career that excites me. So
hmm
it's just so beautiful. I just love your story so much.
Oh,
So
thank
what was, I want to ask you, what was
you.
like I know it was, being the mother being motherhood that kind of led you to start letting go of things, but was there a
hmm
particular catalyst that made you decide to really transition into the coaching space, like, yep, I'm doing it, it's not even like a thought about, oh, what's my calling, but actually I'm going to do this.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's linked to motherhood, definitely. But when my daughter was, I think it was 2 days after her second birthday, by this time I had finally, like, it's sort of like you. It took me a while to really like being a mom,
Yeah.
but by this time I did, right. I was like, oh, this is great. And then 2 days after her second birthday, she was diagnosed with a rare degenerative neuromuscular disease. It's called spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA for short. And basically, what it is it causes muscular weakness uh, and loss of movement due to muscle wasting.
Mm,
So it starts first with your legs, like you lose the ability to walk if you've had it.
mm,
Um, and then you can't move your arms, and then you can't move your head and your neck, and eventually you can't, like, swallow or breathe on your own.
wow.
um, yeah, so I mean, as you can imagine, that was uh, very unexpected for
Yeah.
us. And my husband and I were incredibly devastated when we got that news. And I think one of the this is going to sound very mm, superficial
Mm,
too, but I'm the first to admit, like, I was very locked into this idea, right, of, like, perfectionism and what it means to be, like, a good mom and a perfect family and a perfect leader and stuff. And on a superficial level, like, a rare disease diagnosis just doesn't fit my idea of what a
yeah.
perfect family is.
Yeah.
And apart from all of the understandable grief and everything, like, there was also that. So it was like taking shots at this thing that, like, I had identified with for so long, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. But, and even things like, my husband and I met while we were traveling. And so when we learned that we were going to have a baby and that it was going to be a little girl, we imagined, traveling the world with her and climbing mountains with her and taking, like, long walks through foreign cities and stuff. And then, we learned that she might not even she might, first of all, she might not make it. And even if she does, she's not going to be taking these walks with you because she won't be able to move, you
Yeah.
know? And so I think when you're presented with something like that, something that is so outside of your norm, you you have to really stop and think about what matters the most to you, and how you want to spend
Yeah.
the rest of your life. Like, what do you want to do with it? And just so that people, just a quick update on her. Her name is Zoe, by the way. Just a quick update on her. Like, it was a really, um, it was a really hard process, and we fought as hard and as smart as we could. And like, to be honest, it was super dramatic and long and terrible, but we were able to become the first family in BC to get private treatment for her. There's one drug that's available in Canada right now, and at that time it had been denied for pretty much everyone through private access.
Mm.
Um, and we were able to get that for her, and now we're one of a very small handful of families in BC to get provincial coverage for it. So she's actually doing great. So I know
Yeah.
it sounds like dramatic, but I just want people not to worry. Like, she's doing amazingly well. Her body has totally accepted the treatment, and she can get into as much trouble as any other little 4.5-year-old can. So I don't worry. Obviously I always worry about her, but I think outside of the journey and the struggle, right? What came from that was a real clarity around what it is that I want to do and how I want to be able to show up for my family and for my community.
Yeah.
For me, even though I loved my company and I loved my time there, it was so positive, and I'm so thankful to have had that time. Um, I didn't want to work at a mobile advertising tech company for the rest of my life. It's just not my jam. It's not my passion. For some people it is, and that's
Yeah.
amazing. But for me, it wasn't. Like I said, what really ignites me is being able to support people, um, to stretch beyond what they think they can, so that they can reach their next level of
Yeah.
whatever it is they're trying to get to. Um, and I think the other really, so anyway, to answer your question, I talked a lot. But to answer your question, it was really just that, right? Like, being very honest with myself about um, what I wanted to spend the rest of my life doing.
Yeah.
And what I was doing at that time, was that it? It wasn't for me. And so I knew that there had to be a shift.
Yeah. I just love your story so much. And, you know, a mom's love is just really unconditional. You fight for your children, right? And
Mm-hmm.
being able to let go of that, in your head, what was the perfect lifestyle, perfect family, perfect everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and now knowing that you can create your new perfect, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
perfect to be perfectly imperfect.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think that's the other big thing, like, outside of the clarity about what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, it is like one of the biggest breakthroughs for me, has been, seeing how important and powerful it is to be able to show your vulnerability and share the things that you're struggling with to people, especially when you're in a high visibility role,
Yeah.
right? When we got the diagnosis from her, obviously, like, I didn't hide it from my company, and I would cry in the office, like, I just would.
Yeah.
And because it was heartbreaking. And I thought to myself, like, how can I, first of all, this is shitty,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
but what can I do about it? I'm going to fight for my daughter no matter what, but what else can I do? And so we ended up building this online community, where people could learn about SMA, or they could really be a part of the fight for equitable access for treatment.
Yeah.
And on that platform, like I was so open about our story, and even those moments where it was heartbreaking to watch her stand next to a motor typical kid, and those ideas in your head of like, oh, like look at what that kid can do and my kid can't do that, and will she
Yeah.
ever be able to, and all of that stuff. And there was so much sadness,
Yeah.
to process. And I shared that with our community. And when I did that, you know, I got so many messages from people around the world telling us, how about their stories that they're too scared to share with people, or that hearing about Zoe gives them hope, and all sorts of things. And I was like, man, like how powerful is that? If
Yeah.
you don't have to pretend that everything's okay, and that you have these challenges, and are real about them, and you don't hide them, like it's so empowering for everyone,
Yeah.
especially for someone like me who previously had this very, very narrow idea of what like successful and right and perfect was.
Yeah.
To just, and I think that became a place where I got to focus on breaking down all of those ideas, that there's only room for one type of person in the world,
Yeah.
because everybody's different, and everyone brings so many wonderful things, and also has so many challenges, and it's all totally normal.
Yeah. And we're just all on this journey to really learn about all these things. Just having interviewed so many women, we all struggle and deal with the same issues of perfectionism and letting go of control and all those things, but we just all have different
Mm.
journeys, and it's that showing that vulnerability and telling your story can help someone who's listening to your story go, oh wow, this just resonates with me so much, right? And then they can heal from it as well. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just so beautiful that you have allowed yourself to be vulnerable, and that strength and that resilience. Yeah, it's beautiful. Oh,
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
Vivian, having gone through all that you have gone through, what is your personal mission? What are you here on this earth to do?
You know what? This is going to sound really, really funny, but you were talking about how you've interviewed so many women, and there's this theme of perfectionism that comes through and in all of your interviews. And like, I don't know, this comes up in so many places, and I don't remember the exact study, but for example, there have been studies done on people learning code for the first time, like learning to code. And it's literally a foreign language to people, so it's obvious that you're going to make mistakes or come across things that you don't understand or don't know. But the males in the study, when they tried something, or they came across something that they didn't quite understand, like they would just get in there and like break shit. Like, whatever. And then if they really needed help, then they just ask for it.
Yeah.
Whereas the women, on average anyway, I know that this is an
Yeah.
overgeneralization, but they were much more concerned about following like the proper rules of code, that they didn't experiment as much. They didn't, like try new things. And then when they ran up against something that they couldn't do or they couldn't figure out, more of them internalized it as like, oh, I guess I'm just not good at this,
Yeah.
rather than this is something new for me and I can get better at it, and as I continue to practice.
Yeah.
So there's something about, either the way that women are brought up, or in our genetics or our culture or something, that teaches women that they need to be either more cautious or more perfect. And
Yeah.
that's the right way to be a woman,
Yeah.
right? So I think for me, my personal mission is to encourage more women to just get in there and get messy. Like try big things and make mistakes, and don't hide them.
Mm.
Like hold them up
Yeah.
as badges of honor, where you're like, I tried something and it didn't work, but I tried it.
Yeah.
you know, and that perfection isn't even like necessarily a good or productive way to be a, a mom or a leader. Yeah, so just showing women and encouraging them um, to just try things,
Yeah.
mess up, and that's okay.
Yeah. I love that. And it's so true. We're as a society, I think women have been conditioned to be passive, right? To not speak up. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of women that have trouble, being seen or being heard. I mean, I'm one of those women, and doing this podcast for me is a big thing because I'm being seen and being heard, right? So I just love that, what you are doing to encourage women to really just step up and not be that perfect person and not be afraid to just take that messy action. So that's really
Mm-hmm.
awesome. So,
Mm-hmm.
Vivienne, I know you specialize in helping the female professionals get the raises and promotions that they deserve. So, do you have
Mm-hmm.
any tips for people if they want to start getting those raises and the promotions and really advancing in their career?
Yeah, you can hire me.
That's the best way to do it.
that's
Yeah.
that's the best way. You know what? There's so many things that you can do when you start out on that path. One of the things that I do first with my clients is a really deep discovery on their core values. Um, so either a discovery or a rediscovery if they've done it before, only because when you're starting to grow into leadership, people are going to start looking at you more, they see you more, and it's so important um, to know who you are, because and be able to communicate that to other people and have it be consistent for other people, right? So for example, my core values are gratitude, joy, and courage. And you can go to anybody on my staff or my former staff, and they'll ask you for examples about that, and I have no um, doubt in my mind that they would be able to find examples of that. um, and so when you're growing as a leader, you want to make sure that your reputation is stable and that people can trust you. And one of the ways that they can learn to trust you is that they know what you stand for, and you continue to back that up with action. And also, like when you're starting to grow into leadership, you're going to come up against a lot of hard decisions. And knowing your values and acting by your values really helps make those decisions easier.
Yeah, I love that. Such beautiful advice. Thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
sure a lot of women who are, looking for, really furthering the career will get benefit from that advice. Thank you. And really, definitely when you're more visible, showing your vulnerability. I don't know if you've read Brene Brown, but I just love how she talks about being vulnerable is like so
Yeah.
important as a leader. And when
Mm-hmm.
I was in my my leadership roles, it's such a big part for me to just show people my vulnerability so that they can
Mm-hmm.
connect. Is that heart-centered leadership, which
Yeah.
I really promote as well, because I find when it's very male dominated, they tend to have that disconnect. There's no heart center leadership. I mean, I'm generalizing. Obviously, there are
Of
males that
course.
are amazing, but I find majority they just don't have that connection. They don't have that nurture. They don't show that vulnerability. So it's very like that. You're my underlings, and I am the superior, right? Whereas I've as a leader, you really should be. It's just you're working with each other. They're not working for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. And in that way, it you're helping grow them as leaders because they're getting to stand next to you and not just take orders from you
Yeah, exactly.
as well. And it
And
creates
let
a
them
stronger
think.
team.
Yeah, let them
Mm-hmm.
think and problem solve rather than being told what to do. Yeah, so I love that. Thank you. So Vivian, I'd love to get a little bit more personal with you, if that's all right.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
I mean, I think we've gone quite deep in personal, but let's, go a bit further. Is there a particular experience you've been through that you found the most challenging but led to your biggest breakthrough?
I mean, I think for me, we've gotten to talk about it
Yeah.
um, a lot, but it was really that whole journey of my daughter's diagnosis, and then after that, learning that there was a treatment available. The diagnosis was hard enough.
Yeah.
It didn't fit our idea of what we thought life was going to be.
Yeah.
Um, but then when she was diagnosed, her neurologist also told us, look, there's one treatment that is available and it's being denied to everyone. So I don't know why she told us about it if she didn't think that we would be able to get access to it. But, knowing that our daughter was going to struggle, and then knowing that there was something that could help her, but it was inaccessible, was almost even worse. I'm not going to say it's worse because I know that there are families that came before us at a time when there was no treatment available, and that's worse, hands down. But I think being told that you can't do anything, you could do something about it, but you really can't. Was really hard. And so for me, that piece of it was my fuel. We took the first month to grieve. It was terrible. My husband's birthday is 2 days after her birthday, so we spent his birthday just like crying all day. And I remember thinking, like, but there's something that's out there. There's something that can help, even though we're not really supposed to be able to access it. And I couldn't let that out of my mind. And so I remember very clearly it was her 1 month diagnosis anniversary. So exactly a month after she had been diagnosed, I was in my office, and luckily I had like a closing door. I closed the door and I sobbed, like in my office, just full ugly cry on my desk. They could probably hear me outside, but I was just like completely losing it. And after I let out all of that pain and that emotion, I was like, okay, so now what? Is it that I just accept this, or what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I can remember really clearly that moment that I made the decision that we're going to fight. And we're not going to do it in a way that throws anyone under the bus. We're going to do it in a very positive, community building, supportive way. But don't ever, question that I will get this for my daughter.
Yeah.
Because when you want something in your life and you fully commit to it, this could be, a treatment for a diagnosis. It could be, a promotion that you're going after. It could be a new business that you want to launch. It could be a healthier environment for your family, and you need to leave your current partner in order to do that. When you commit yourself to that, you know that there will be a way, because you're not going to stop until it happens. Yeah. And I didn't know that before that moment. Because I thought when you try something, because I was a perfectionist, right? I was like, well, when you try something, and first of all, I don't want to try anything if I'm not going to succeed at it. But if I do try something and I don't succeed at it, it must mean that I'm not good at that and I'm not meant to do it, But I was like, I don't care if I'm not meant to have this for her, because I'm going to get it, right? And I won't stop until I do. And I think that is the beauty of the human experience, is that when you really fully step into wanting something and having a reason to do it, like, there's nothing that's going to stop you.
Yeah. Oh, I just love that. It's just so powerful, so powerful that, what you've had to go through and what you've learned from it. It just really made you into this courageous, beautiful, like, being, right? I can just feel the power within you, that courage. And it is true, when you have that why you're doing it and you're committed to it, if something doesn't work, it doesn't mean that you're not good at it. It means that you need to course correct to get to where you want to go, right? And
100%.
it's just remembering that, because so many people, I mean, me myself included, like you before, if I'm not going to get the outcome, I'm not doing it. Why would I do something that I know I'm going to not fail at, right?
Yeah,
Or if I, yeah, as I said, like, as you said, if you try it and it doesn't work, then that means I'm not meant to do it. And
mhm,
not really having that commitment and that
yeah,
faith, that belief
yeah,
that you can. So I just love that. Thank you so much. I just loved
yeah.
this conversation. So, Vivienne, having gone through so much, what were some of the tools or teachers that were really helpful in that healing process?
Mm, okay, so well, I have to be really honest about this, um, and let you know that when I decided in that moment to really go for it, I sort of um, ignored all of the parts of me that needed attention in
Mhm.
terms of like in terms of healing the grief and the trauma that my body was experiencing because of this whole thing. I went into full on like mama bear VP of sales mode where I was just like, this is going to happen, and it was very positive,
Yeah,
um, but I didn't allow that time
yeah,
to let myself feel sad, you know, or to let myself be overcome with this new reality. And so, and don't get me wrong, we heard some no's. And so there, it was definitely like um, a winding journey. And it took until, I don't know, a couple months ago, really, to finally get the yes that we were looking for from the government. And up until that point, I thought that I was fine because I was taking steps and things were moving along in the campaign. So I was like, "Oh, I'm doing great. I'm doing great. I'm seeing the outcomes that I want." Um, and it wasn't until after we got the outcome that we were looking for, and then I was like, "Okay, like that's great. I can stop worrying about that now. I can start moving forward with the rest of my life." And I actually couldn't, like I totally fell apart. And I've never done this ever before in my life, but there were a few weeks where I literally just sat on the couch and I watched Netflix for like 6 hours or something like that.
yeah,
And I couldn't do anything. It was so out of character for me and so out of line with like who I thought I was.
yeah.
Um, and then I realized after talking to a social worker, I was like, oh, right, there's all this trauma and grief that you haven't actually dealt with yet. So your body is telling you that now that the danger is gone, like it needs rest. You need to give it some love,
Yeah.
you know? And to be very honest, I didn't know how to do that because I had never done it before. So, the social worker started by asking me questions like, if she would see me getting upset and start to cry, she would say, "What's happening in your body right now?" And I was like, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Like, that's just
Like,
that's just
what?
not my background. I'm like, I don't know. I understand A pluses, and like that's it. I'm like, what's happening in my body? I don't know. But it was when I started letting those types of questions in and actually trying to answer them in a real way, like actually paying attention to what was physically happening in my body when I was in different states. Like that was the only time that I was finally able to um, to move past all of this trauma that had happened in my body. So I think one of the tools for me was to, number one, let myself slow down and give myself the rest that it needed in whatever form. It happened to be at that time, hours of Netflix on the couch in my pajamas.
And it's
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Um, and then the second was to actually trying to connect my head with my heart and what was happening in my body, because I had been very like intellectual about everything. I was in my whole life, I've always lived up here. And it was only when I started to connect those two um, that things started to heal, you
Yeah.
know? And I think the third biggest thing for me was the realization that there isn't always an answer. There isn't always a right answer, right? Like sometimes you just feel something and you're sad about something, and that's all there is to it. You don't need to be able to solve it um, or to not feel sad anymore. You just have to acknowledge that it's there and it's real, and that that's fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. That's such great advice. And I just love that you let yourself just feel. And I think, especially from an Asian background, we're not taught to feel emotions, right? We're very in our head, is always in our head. We're always having to kind of keep up with the Joneses to be perfect on the outside.
Yeah.
So we have face. That's very Asian thing. So allowing yourself to feel is just so beautiful that you let yourself do that and to just heal from that process. As you say, sometimes all you need to do is just sit with the emotion and there's nothing to fix. And that's the healing part of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That
Beautiful.
was actually a shock for me when I learned that.
You're like, what's happening? And what is this sitting there and feeling? This doesn't make any sense. Oh, I love it. I mean, and that was such a big thing for me to learn as well. So I totally
Mhm.
get where you're coming from. You're like, what? So, Vivian, I love reading. I'm not sure if you are a book reader as well, but is there a particular book that really, impacted or changed your life?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many, to be honest, because I love reading as well. I think you mentioned Brene Brown earlier in our
Yeah.
conversation. I love her. I love all of her work. Um, one of the I'd say in the last couple years, one of the books that pops to mind first is a book called Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. Um, who, like there's all these leadership gurus and stuff, and this woman is actually, she's a writer, and she wrote a book about writing, which is like, what? That's
Yeah.
weird. um, Bird by Bird is a book about writing, and one of the things that I will remember forever from this book is she introduces this idea of the 1 inch window, um, and it's the reason that she talks about it is because a lot of times new writers get really overwhelmed with this idea of like sitting down and writing an entire book or writing an entire story or something, and they just sit there and they get paralyzed by it. And so her idea about the 1 inch window is you can hold up, just this little tiny window, and all you have to do is write as much as you can see through that. That's it.
Yeah.
Just this little tiny thing. And then you've started, right? And you don't have to pay attention to the rest of the picture or what you think it's going to look like and all of that stuff. And for me, because I love writing as well, that spoke to me as a writer, but I think that it really translates into anyone who's trying to do something new or something big, make a change or build something. It's so easy to get overwhelmed by this idea that like at the end of this, I want to have a business, I'm like, oh my God, the business needs this and this and this and this. But if you can just focus, you know, at the beginning on just that 1 inch window and ask yourself, what is the one thing that I can do, and fit in that one window, and then just do that. And then when that's done, you ask yourself the next window, and then you do that. And you don't pay attention to the what you think the bigger picture is going to look like, because that's probably going to change anyway. Um, but you're still building a picture, frame by frame. And when I think about that, it helps me to slow down and and just do the thing, like don't worry about all of the other stuff. Like just focus on what's in front of you. What's the next best thing that you can do? And that's it. And then you've won.
Yeah. I love that. I'm gonna have to add that to my my list of books to read, which is longer than my arm. But yeah, that's just so beautiful how it's how she's written it out to
Mhm.
explain that process of just taking that next step, even if it's a baby step, that 1 inch step, right, is still a
Mhm.
step towards what you're wanting to work towards. So that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, Vivian, if you could time travel, and go back to a younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself?
um, I mean, I would probably just tell myself to stop being so damn hard on myself, you know,
Yeah.
and and that that there are so many different ways to be, and they're all perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I love that.
Hmm.
And I want to ask you, I mean, this year has been a year of change for a lot of people, like the whole world. And, you've been through a lot of change yourself in the last few years as well. So, what advice or recommendation would you have for people to get rid of limiting beliefs or any fear that is holding them
Mm,
back from taking that step towards, the change that is needed in their life?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, we could link it back to bird by bird, and
Yeah.
it's really just that. Ask yourself the question. Well, first define where it is that you want to be. Where do you want to go so that you know where you're headed? And then just ask yourself, because there's all these things like the fear and a million reasons that people don't do things that will help move them along, because the kids are awake, or the kids are asleep, or the kids are in school, or the kids are like
Yeah.
all sorts of stuff. um, but just ask yourself, what is the next tiny thing that I can do? What is the next best thing that I can do? And just do that. Just that.
Yeah.
That's it. And don't listen to all of that other, all of the voices telling you, like, but what if this, and what if you fail, and what if it turns out horribly, or what if you succeed, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Just focus on the next step. That's it. Then
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about all the fears of that stuff, because it's
Yeah.
you're just looking in front of you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a lot of times when we think way too far ahead, that's when we get paralyzed, right? Because we're like, oh, this is just so big, and how am I even going to get there? And
Yeah.
what if I don't get there? Or what if I
Mm-hmm.
get there
What
and
if I did
how to cope
it?
with it, right? It's just all these fears that we just put in our heads by ourselves, right? And it's not needed. And yeah, I love that advice. Thank you. So Vivian,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a little bit of a turn, because for me on my journey, it was about self-love, really
Mm-hmm.
stopping that negative self-talk, and really looking after myself. So as a
Mm-hmm.
mom and entrepreneur, what are your top 3 go-to activities to make sure you give yourself that self-love and self-care? You've learned it now.
This is gonna sound really funny, but like I said earlier, my one of my core values is joy. And I find a lot of joy in music, particularly 90s slow jams and love songs.
I'm not judging. I love that too.
So one of my go-tos when I need a little bit of self-love is like, I mean, whether people are home or not, I'm just like straight up in jammies, belting out slow jams from the 90s, and that brings me that joy.
Yeah, love it.
And yeah, that helps me. Things are going to be okay. So that's number one. I mean, and then I think number two for me um, is being able to get my body moving and working. So like I'm a member of Orange Theory, so I try and be able to give back to my body by working it hard and making it stronger. And then the third for me is, sometimes because I am so up in my head so often, and I'm always like very focused and go, 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 is like sometimes I just need to sit, like my body was asking me for. It's like sit on the couch and just watch a movie, and that's what I need in that moment, and allowing that to be a thing that I give to myself, and have that be okay.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
because I think we're just conditioned to like think that if we're not doing something productive, then we're not being
Hmm.
productive. But looking after
Yeah.
yourself is actually productive because
Yeah.
if you're not looking after yourself, then you're gonna fall in a heap and you're not gonna be any sort of productive then, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yes,
Um,
slow jams, working out, and movies.
Awesome. I love those. So, Vivian, I just have loved our conversation today. You're just so inspiring, and I just love your journey and what you've learned and what you've shared with us today. Before we wrap up, can you share with us what is setting your soul on fire right now?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, if it's not obvious through this conversation, it's really leaning into this idea that there are so many ways to be, and perfectionism is actually just, it's something that I hid behind for a really long time, and I'm ready to lean into this idea that I can grow and be anyone that I want to be. And same with anyone else, right? Who you were in the past and what you thought you were in the past, it's not who you need to be, in the present or in the future. So so yeah, that's what's lighting me up right now. It's leaning into the growth mindset and knowing that I can be whatever I want to be, and that other people can too.
Yeah, I love that. Not letting your past define your future and your present. Yeah,
Hmm.
beautiful. Thank you. So, Vivian, if people want to work with you, where can they find you?
For sure. I'm mostly on LinkedIn. So if you look me up, I'm the only Vivienne Damatan on there. And particularly if you're a female professional looking to up your leadership or get to the next step in your career, come and find me. Or you can follow my Facebook page. I'm on, well, www.facebook.com/leadership. So leadership coach, but with an H. So leadership coach. Or you can join my Facebook group, that is called Women in Control of Their Lives.
Awesome. Thank you, Vivian. Thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. I'll have all your details and any recommended resources available in the show notes so people can reach out to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. It's been
Thank
so
you.
fun.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So until next time, I love you, I believe in you, and you are worth taking that first step to the life of your dreams.